So I appreciate the invitation. And as David says, why do I do this? As he notes, it's hard for me to believe, but 30 years ago, David was my student, which is almost impossible for me to believe. But 35 years ago, I invented this notion of video journalism. That is, one reporter makes their own story by themselves. Television news is pretty appalling, particularly the way it's done by groups and camera people and editors and producers. It's absolutely ridiculous. In the print world, if you want to write something, you pick up a laptop or a pencil or whatever, and you write what's in your head. And in music, you pick up a guitar, and you only in television news do we have this notion of group activities, which I don't believe in whatsoever. So for the last 35 years, I have designed and refined and built more than 60 television news stations and networks around the world based on this notion of really authorship more than anything else. And it's been quite successful. As David mentions, it's my second year into converting CBS News to work in my way of going. Everyone at CBS News will now work with an iPhone and nothing else. Big cameras go in the toilet, along with tripods, microphones, lights, and everything else that went along with it. Everybody will get an iPhone. Everybody will be taught to make television this way. I'm in my 8th year of building out Spectrum, which is a big cable channel in America, and we've fielded 1,100 journalists in this way. And interestingly enough, after this, I have a call with Mark Thompson, who's now heading CNN, to talk about doing the CNN. So this is a very, very popular and powerful way of working. One of the changes that we made is, instead of making really crap news with the reporter and the stand-up and B-roll and all that stuff that goes along, and David was a really progenitor of this, we model our news stories on Netflix, and I think David would call this cinema journalism, and that's exactly what we do. Character arc of story, drama, and it's worked extremely well. We find the ratings pick up and people actually engage with it. Why is this important to do? When I started in the television business, there were basically in America 3 news networks: ABC, NBC, CBS, and in Britain there were 2, ITV and the BBC. Today, there are literally millions of choices between cable and, most specifically, social media, which is terrible and appalling and terrifying. If you go on TikTok, which I'm sure all of you do, you can discover that the Earth is in fact flat, because there's great evidence for it, that no one ever went to the moon. And the other day I discovered that Princess Di was actually killed by Zionists because she was about to recognize Palestine. So in a word, most of what's on TikTok is bullshit. But if you spend your time on TikTok, you're not capable, because nobody's capable of differentiating between what's actually fact and what is bullshit. And most of it is bullshit. But we live in a world in which you're inundated with bullshit, and therefore we have no way of getting around it. According to Poynter, 50% of people now get their primary news source from social media, which is absolutely terrifying. And 85% of people in the age group of 18 to 30, which you're probably all in, go to TikTok first as a source of news, which just scares the crap out of me, because it messes with people's heads. The other thing with social media is, the point of social media is not to deliver information. The point of social media is to deliver eyeballs, because the client for social media is not you, although you may think you are if you're watching on Instagram or TikTok or anything else. The client here is advertisers. That's who pays for it. You get it for free for a reason, because they pay for it. And the product that social media, whether it's Facebook or anybody else, delivers to the client is you. You are the product, your eyeballs. That's all it is. It's a kind of digital slavery in a weird way, and you all signed up for it, and it messes with your head. And there are algorithms now in Facebook and Instagram and all other social media that will warp the thing that you see based upon what you like. So the news that David gets is different from the news feed that I get, is different from the news feed that each of you gets, because it's tailored to your needs, which means your perception of the world is different from his perception of the world, is different from my perception of the world, and different from reality. And that's why politics is so screwed up, because nobody actually knows what the truth is. So a couple of organizations that I work with, like the New York Times or Spectrum or CBS, are still dedicated to doing quality journalism. But there's no point in doing quality journalism if nobody looks at it. And if you're going to have a reporter do a stand-up and shoot B-roll and do interviews and stuff like that, nobody's going to watch it, because nobody really wants to watch it, because nobody cares, because it's, in a word, boring and unwatchable. So what we've done is, besides equipping everybody with these little iPhones and telling them to go out and make stories on their own, is we teach them in these boot camps that I run to make essentially what David would call cinema journalism, or what I would call Netflix marries the news. And so we take all the news stories and we create a character, an arc of story, and a resolution. And the news pieces that we put on places like CBS News or now Spectrum or any of the other people that I work with look like movies. They don't look like news packages anymore. And because they look like movies, we find the ratings actually increase enormously. But more importantly, because they look like movies, it engages viewers like you. You spend most of your time watching stuff like, Game of Thrones and stuff like that, which is about a character and an arc of story and a story and development of a plot. And so what we've done is we've taken real journalism, real news stories, and married it to that model. And we find that people now actually binge watch the goddamn news stories like they binge watch Game of Thrones. It's a really weird development. So there we are. How is that, David? Did I make the 5 minutes?
Made the 5 minutes. Yeah, in fact, it was 5 minutes 05. So I'm going to tick you off of the 05 because you ran over.
Ah, sorry.
That's all right. Right, all right, we can